I'm going to begin with a very simple premise. And everything I'm going to talk about is laid out in this new book, and hopefully in easy to understand English with a lot of stories of specific people. In the book, we do refer to the research, but we do it in little boxes that are encapsulated. And that way, if you really wanted to read about it, you could. And that's kind of how I'm going to go about tonight. So the key to building our organizations, the key to helping people in our families, helping our children, helping spouses and partners, is the issue of whether or not we're building a resonant or caring relationship. And the challenge there is whether or not you care, but it's manifest by whether or not you listen. Sounds simple? Aaron Benet was in kindergarten, 5 years old, and the kindergarten teacher said to the class, "I'd like you to draw a picture of a house." So most of the children drew a picture of a house that looked like this. They were using crayons, so it was colored. Aaron drew this. Looked a little odd. Then in a later class, the teacher said to the children, "I want you to draw a picture of an airplane." Most of them drew something that looked like this. And Aaron's was here. At home, Aaron was a normal 5-year-old boy. At times he was bouncing off the walls, other times he was playing with the family dog, and he was a cheerful kid. His parents get a request to go in and meet the teacher. So they figured it was a parent-teacher conference. They walk in, sit down, and there's the teacher, and there's the principal of the elementary school, and the chief psychologist for the school district. And they go on to announce to Aaron's parents that Aaron is showing signs of emotional disturbance. They didn't know whether or not he was feeling safe at home, or they were having difficulties in their relationship, which of course, right away, you can imagine the mother and father sitting there, getting more and more defensive and angry. And then they went on to say how, in the classroom, Aaron is, fighting with the teacher at times and then withdrawing a lot. And then he draws these pictures, which, if you're clinically trained, Sean didn't mention it, but during the 70s, I did mostly psychotherapy with alcoholics and drug addicts around a new therapy program I developed, which is really why Sean wanted me to come here and talk to you. The British preoccupation with tea is, of course, much oversold. But anyway, as we know from any BBC show. So, no, but seriously, if you look at these two drawings as a clinical psychologist, you worry, because stick drawings very often could be an indication of some emergent psychosis. So his parents are defensive. They say, Aaron's not like that. And sorry, I wasn't typing. Aaron's not like that. And they started saying, well, it doesn't matter because we think he is, and we want him to go into special class. Now, I don't exactly know how you have the pattern here, but back when I was working with the educational systems and head teachers back in the 80s, in the UK, I think it was similar to what in the US, where there's a special class for those kids who have emotional or physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities. And so they insisted that Aaron was going to be pulled out of his normal class and put into this special class. Nowhere is there more stigma attached than going to special class. And especially for a child who very often is sensitive to what his or her peers think, this is a bad move. So his parents try to argue it, and finally the chief psychologist says, look, we've made the decision. He's going to special class. If you don't want him to, then you have to pull him out of the whole school system, which was the public school system. So they went home somewhat dejected, holding Aaron's two drawings as they go in the front door. He had stayed up because he knew they were going to see his teacher. he saw them come in with his drawings, and he said, "Oh, Mom, Dad, you have my pictures." And they said, "Yes, Aaron," and we loved them. His father was in an OD program, getting a master's degree as one of my students, but he was fairly facile in an internal role. He'd done a number of things about being an internal consultant. And his kind of instinct kicked in. Even though he and his wife were pretty dejected and angry, he just smiled and he said, "Aaron, yes." So they sat down on the couch, and on the table in front of the couch, he put the two drawings, and his wife sat down, and Aaron sat down, and he said, "Aaron, tell me what you drew. What did you see?" And smiling at him. And Aaron said, "Well, the teacher said to draw a house. And every house has different floors, and you need stacks of pipes to get water up to the floors, and pipes to bring the toilet water and all that down. And then because you have several floors, you need electrical wiring on each floor so that people can connect their TVs and their Game Boys and things." I said, "Wow." And he said, "Aaron, what about this?" He said, "This is an airplane." And he said, "Okay, tell me about it." And he said, "Well, here are the wings, and the fuel in an airplane is stored in the wings, and you have to have pipes that move the fuel from the wings and where it's stored to the engines. And then these are the electrical cables that the pilots use to control the wings and the tail and things." All somebody had to do was to ask Aaron, "What are you drawing?" And they would have found out it's not a little kid with potential psychosis, it's a budding engineer or architect. Later on, it came out that Aaron is left-handed and the teacher wanted him to be right-handed and kept haranguing him in class. No wonder he resisted a bit. It took his parents 3 years before they could get him out of special class. 3 years. I don't know what it's going to do to him, but I know that I'm still angry about the 3 times in various parts of elementary school that the school system I was going to thought I was cognitively slow and tried to lead me back. You never get over it. All because they didn't ask him what he was doing or why he was doing it or what he was seeing. I think that goes on in our world all the time. You're in HR, or you're a consultant and you put together a program for people to develop. Do you ask people if they want to develop? Is it voluntary, truly voluntary? You know, how many times do we say, "Here's what you need to be a great person. These are the competencies at this company." And you're expecting people to go, "Yes." When we know anybody over 35 years old doesn't want to maximize their performance every day at work. So the dilemma we have is one of the most simple human things, a conversation in which you say to somebody, "Why are you doing this? Why might you be interested? What's going on?" In social psychology, we know that there are things that variously we call vibes between people. Well, we now know that it's not the domain of Deanna Troi, who was the Betazoid empath in Star Trek The Second Generation, of empathy, true empathy. It is hardwired into all of our brains. I will tell you the exact networks that are activated, but everybody in this room, and given all the interactions, unless somebody has some autism or autism spectrum disorder, you are hardwired to pick up on the emotions of others. Now, here's the kicker. It happens in 8 to 40 thousandths of a second, according to Joseph Ledoux. That's deeply unconscious. The reason why everybody is still talking about, and with increasing velocity, talking about, or intensity, I should say, mindfulness or social awareness or emotional intelligence or emotional self-awareness is because what you're feeling deep inside is what's infecting people around you, regardless of the mask you think you have on your face. So whether you have a spouse or a partner or you live at home with your parents, which would be odd at your age, but I'm told I shouldn't be judgmental about these things. You know, sometimes you have in the early morning one of these rip-snorting arguments, and you have your drive to work is a white-knuckle drive if you're driving in a car, or if you're on the subway or the metro, you're hanging on like this, and you're white-knuckle because you're still seething, and you're about to come into the office, you say, I can't do this to my colleagues, I'm going to put on a happy face. So you walk in and you say, oh, good morning, good morning. And what you don't realize is what's preceding you is a bow wave of negative affect. Because people are not tuning into what's on your face, they're tuning into the emotion that you're exuding. And you know what? They're feeling lousy. And because you're smiling, they're saying to themselves, why do I feel so crappy and he's smiling? Now, unless you're Meryl Streep or Denzel Washington, you can't fake these emotions. And by the way, they don't fake them. They actually recreate them. That's how good actors and actresses do it. But most of us aren't that good at it. So what happens is our inside emotions are affecting people all the time. Now, this goes positively or negatively, so that's a source of hope, but it's also the danger, and the reason it's a danger is because of this. Annoying stress. You know, your cell phone drops a call. That's an annoying stress episode. 8 to 40 thousandths of a second, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. For the shorthand, I'll call this the stress response. It's part of your autonomic nervous system. And what's immediately happens in your body is 3 endocrines are secreted. Endocrines are hormones that are also neurotransmitters. So they're working in your brain, but also in your whole body. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, which I think you call adrenaline, noradrenaline here, same thing, quickly goes in and it pulls blood for your capillaries to send blood to your large muscle groups in your arms or legs so you can fight or flight. That's why your blood pressure goes up, because you have the same amount of fluid, shorter distance, pulse rate goes up, your breathing goes faster. What most of us don't appreciate, excuse me, is that this is happening in your brain as well. Your autonomic nervous system, of which this is a part, wants your body to survive. So it is saying to your brain, hey, we need the networks that affect your breathing. That network that you use to understand somebody who looks different than you are, that's not critical to you breathing. So right away, we lose access to many of the networks in our brain. Corticosteroids, CRH, CRF, ACTH, cortisol enters the bloodstream. Cortisol is the natural anti-inflammatory, but cortisol does 2 nasty things to the human body. One, it turns off our immune system. Within minutes of a cell phone, your cell phone dropping a call, annoying stress, your immunoglobulin A and your natural killer T cells are very low, which means you all of a sudden have become vulnerable to all the microbes around you. And that's one of the reasons why people in leadership positions or in helping professions have higher incidence of bacterial infection, viral infection, influenza, type 2 diabetes, and ulcers. And then because of the epinephrine, norepinephrine, hyperlipidemia, strokes, heart attacks, cardiovascular difficulties, gastrointestinal difficulties, sleep disorders, and sexual dysfunctions. Welcome to leadership. Now, you know, as an American, I'm going to start on a negative note and I'm going to get more positive. If I was a German professor, I'd start on a negative note and I'd get even more depressing. But let's hold that aside for a minute. So the dilemma is, though that was one of the things. The second nasty thing cortisol does, it stops neurogenesis. By the time you go to sleep tonight, you will have lost about 85,000 neurons today. Died. Now, you started with a few billion, so chances are you're okay. But if you don't replace them at some hefty rate, you're going to start to have a spongiform quality in your brain. You're going to have big holes in your brain that makes it look like the autopsied brain of somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. Neurogenesis is the conversion of stem cells in the adult human brain, adult being somebody over 26, typically, They come from your hippocampus or your olfactory lobe, which is behind your eye sockets. The conversion of those into new neurons is neurogenesis. Cortisol stops neurogenesis. So under this, what's happening is you don't feel very good. And then somebody comes up to you and says, where's the report that's due Friday? And if you don't say it, what you're feeling is, what's it to you? Which outside of New York is a defensive response. Now, this is the really important point. We start to perceive things as threatening that aren't. We know now, there's plenty of neurological evidence that the more you do emails, texting, Twitter, all of the social media, the more you do it, the more anxious, nervous, stressed, and even suicidal you'll become. Right now, it's the one thing accounting for the suicide rate among freshmen, which is a horrible waste of human capital. But it's not limited to freshmen. I mean, tonight, while I'm talking, if anything happens on my phone, I get a jostle on my watch. I cannot get away unless these things are in another room. But the idea is it keeps us all on alert, and that activates the sympathetic nervous system. And our bodies were not designed for this. Now, if all this is going on, how come you're not dead? Maybe you are. And isn't this what you thought heaven would be? No, seriously, the reason you're not dead is the other part of your autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic, which after this we'll call, for shorthand, renewal. And what happens here, it's what happens if you see a baby laugh or a golden retriever puppy roll in the grass. That's it. You get that smile, your eyes go like that. It's a genuine, called a Duchenne smile. And you well up with this positive feeling. Now, if you're a female, you predominantly secrete oxytocin, males vasopressin, and that does a number of amazing things in your body at this dosage level. First, it spreads out. It's a vasodilator. So you start to feel warm. Your blood pressure drops. Your pulse rate slows down. Your breathing gets deeper. And it's in this state that your immune system kicks into high gear. It's in this state that you are cognitively at your best. Many research studies published in medicine and psychology show us that it's in this parasympathetic state that you can handle the most complex concepts that you can handle. You can multitask, and you're the most creative. It's in this state that neurogenesis occurs. It's in this state that you feel hopeful, optimistic, joyful. Not necessarily happy. Happy is a confused emotion. So the kicker we have, and by the way, I always warn my audiences about this, the research on all of this is very good on people in their teens, 20s, and 30s. And this becomes relevant because oxytocin is made from estrogen. So that means when you're postmenopausal, whether surgically or age-induced, your bodies aren't producing much oxytocin. Men, vasopressin is based on and is a derivative of testosterone. So as we go through andropause, the same thing happens. There isn't a lot of good research on it. We know that hormone replacement therapy can kick oxytocin back into a woman's body post-menopause. But as all of you know, HRT has horrible side effects or unintentional effects with cervical cancer and breast cancer and all sorts of other cancers. So I'm just doing a flag that says, for those of us over 55, unless you've had surgery, some of this we don't quite fully understand. But for the parts of it we do understand, I mean, here in London, a few psychologists did a study not too long ago in which they used epinephrine spray to stimulate stress and oxytocin spray, nasal spray, to stimulate the parasympathetic activation, renewal. And they were able to show that it affects your peripheral nervous system. Now, if you're a pilot, you know this, but if you're not a pilot and you don't know your peripheral not peripheral nervous system, sorry, your peripheral vision, stare straight ahead, move your hands kind of about a hand's length out from your shoulders, and keep moving them back till you just can't see them. Mine is right here, right now. That's my peripheral vision. Okay, under the epinephrine spray, goes down to 30 degrees. That's why we have not invented here. That's not the way we do it here in our organizations. We have competition neglect. People can't see these things. So one of the dilemmas that we have is that when you're under stress, even annoying stress, you are cognitively impaired, you're perceptually impaired, and you're emotionally impaired. So if you know somebody who says, oh, I'm a stress junkie, I really like deadlines, you know, give me some stress and give me a few Red Bulls and I can really deliver, you're talking to an idiot. Because the human organism does not work that way. And it's like people thinking they can drive after they have 2 or 3 drinks. You can't hit the brake pedal fast enough as you could when you had none or 1 drink. That's just life. And what happens here is we fool ourselves into thinking we can do well when we can't.